You're live.
Thank you, Christina. I want to welcome everybody to a special City Council meeting, November the 10th, 2020. Madam Clerk, roll call. Or Madam Clerk, introduction. Go ahead.
Prior to roll call, the city attorney would like to make an announcement regarding the teleconferencing procedures.
Thank you. The procedures adopted for this meeting meet or exceed the standards set forth in Governor Newsom's Order N-25-20, allowing public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. After roll call, I'll ask the mayor to recognize me once again to confirm certain matters for the record. Thank you.
Councilmember Hudson? Can I get a verbal, please?
Get a verbals, Dave.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Alone?
Here.
Councilmember Perkins?
Here.
Vice Mayor Zafar?
Here.
And Mayor Clarkson?
Here.
Thank you.
Martin, take yours.
Thank you. I have 3 questions for the council. I'd like you now to verify that all members can hear me well, that all members have been able to hear all previous speakers, including the roll call, and that each council member believes, based on facial or voice recognition, that all persons representing themselves to be council members are council members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5.
2, 3. There's 5. Yeah. I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Will do, sir. Madam Clerk.
Item 2, public comment.
Item for public comment. We only have one item on the agenda, so you can speak a public comment prior to the staff presentation or do your public comment after the staff presentation. We ask that you keep your comments not more than 3 minutes. Christina, does anybody want to speak prior to the staff presentation?
For those in the audience that would like to speak, please use the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone at this time. And I've also received written comments for this item, so if we could read them now or after the staff presentation. It does not appear we have anyone raising their hand in the audience.
All right, let's go to next item.
Item 3, new business 3.1, Tassajara Parks Agricultural Preserve Agreement. Staff report by Debbie Chamberlain, Community Development Director.
Thank you. Let me share my screen and bring up the presentation.
Christina, I thought I saw a hand raised, so just wanted to bring that to your attention. Seth Adams, was that, I don't know if it was a mistake or something.
I think he then lowered his hand.
And then he lowered it.
Okay, so I'll be able to see my screen now. Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we have a workshop on the Tassajara Parks Agricultural Preserve. That's kind of a mouthful for me right now. So a little bit of background on the Tassajara project. It's been over a number of years that there have been attempts to develop the valley dating back to 1997 with what we call the TVPOA group, which was about almost 6,000 homes, some commercial, and then a park and open space component. And then in 2010, there was the New Farm Project, 187 units, 671 acres preserved for ag and open space uses that would really consist of olive orchards, community gardens, and a cemetery. There was a house of worship and a fire training facility. And then we come to the latest endeavor in 2014 is the Tassajara Parks Project, which is the subject of our discussion tonight with the Agricultural Preserve Agreement, which is proposed for 125 units on 30 acres, 727 acres of permanent open space. And then there's also a site dedicated to this fire protection district. So to break it down a little bit more, there are 2 sites, the northern site of 155 acres, which is where the 30 acres of development will occur. As part of that, 101 acres will be preserved and 24 acres for non-urban development, which is like a staging area and equestrian center. And then also the second portion of the site, the southern site, is 616 acres with over 600 acres dedicated to the park district and then the 7-acre dedication to the fire protection district. A requirement for this project, since it is currently located outside the urban limit line, it will require a 30-acre expansion. And in order to accomplish that expansion, there is an agricultural preserve agreement that is being proposed. So just a little bit more on the project location. The northern site you see up here, called the Northern Preserve Area, with the area of residential development, which is next to Tassajara Parks Elementary School, and then the Southern Preserve Area. And then coming on Tassajara Road, you can see labeled. So as I mentioned, a 30-acre urban limit line expansion is required. It is less, since it's 30 acres or less, voter approval is not required, and the Board of Supervisors may make the adjustment on a 4/5 vote. In order to do that, they need to make one of 6 required findings. And the one they're looking to make as part of this project is that a majority of the cities that are party to a preserve agreement, such as we'll be sharing tonight, the county may approve changing the urban limit line affecting all or any portion of the land covered by the preservation agreement. And so in executing this agreement, it acknowledged that the county has satisfied the one of the required findings. While there are 6, only one of the 6 needs to be satisfied in order for the urban limit line to be adjusted without voter, under 30 acres without voter approval. So, the Agricultural Preserve Agreement, as I mentioned, it does satisfy one of the specified findings to make the urban limit line adjustment. It will preserve over 1,700 acres of agriculture. The parties to the agreement would be the City of San Ramon, Contra Costa County, and the Park District. Back in October, the town of Danville voted to oppose the project and the APA. And so in general, and the APA is included with your staff report, the parties agree to the following: support general plan policies to protect open space, commits no urban infrastructure expansion, no annexations, or in general plan and zoning ordinance support for agricultural uses, and you promote the agricultural uses within that area. Now, understanding that this area is outside of our sphere of influence, it's our planning area, which means it's important to us, but we have no jurisdictional authority in the Tassajara Valley. So as part of this process, there is a component of urban limit line protection through the project design. So the project as designed would secure permanent open space in the Tassajara Valley, and it as designed would prevent further expansion of the county urban limit line into Tassajara Valley. Essentially, the urban limit line would be surrounded by publicly owned and controlled lands about 1.5 miles. It creates what they've called a green buffer along portions of the urban limit line boundary and preclude future urban limit line expansions. Graphic for this. So if you can see in black is the project boundaries I've identified, and then you'll see in red is a 30 acre adjustment. So the area in between the red and the black is what is known as the green buffer. Since the project boundary and the urban limit line are not coterminous, that's where any further urban limit line expansions cannot occur. Had they been coterminous, then potentially there would have been a possibility upon the board's action. But since there is publicly held or public controlled lands in between and the lines are not coterminous, it does establish this green buffer that's being discussed as part of the project approval and basically precluding future expansions of the urban limit line. So with that short presentation, thank you for receiving the staff report. Please accept public comment, discuss, and actions that you can take tonight is a letter of support as we discussed in the staff report, a resolution support, and alternatively, we did in reviewing the APA today, if the council so would like to approve the APA, we can bring it back to you in November for consideration and approval, and then we can forward that to the county. There was some concern that the environmental review process had to be completed, but there is a provision in the APA that we're comfortable with the council moving forward should they desire to approve the APA at their next meeting. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
What I'd like to do, and now Dave wants to make a comment, is this an opportunity for any of us to ask a question about this and not make comments about your feelings about the project, but clarifying questions. Dave, you have one?
Yeah, Debbie, you said this isn't in our planning area. Too many things going on, too many years. The planning area used to go all the way to the Danville line. We did something. This is not in our planning area.
Yes,
No, it's not in our sphere of influence. It is within our planning area.
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, I'd heard that it was not in the planning area. That's why I asked the question. These APAs, do they have a date? Like, the Williamson Act where they, is it a 20-year? Is it a forever APA? Or will we see something on the agreement that has a date on it? Date certain?
I don't believe so. In looking at the agreement, it does not. And I will also mention that John Kopchak from Contra Costa County is also on our call, so he can answer more specific questions that I may not have on APA. But the intent is many, many years ago, the county executed what's called the Briones Agricultural Agreement. And it was in the 80s. And so it was basically an MOU, a handshake agreement that's still in effect today. And so the idea is that it would remain in perpetuity.
Okay.
Any other questions? Sabina, you have a question.
Yeah, so Debbie, what advantage is this for the city of San Ramon to sign this APA or show support for it?
Oh, great question. Thank you. So if you recall from the presentation, the slides, the southern portion of the project area is coterminous with the city limit line and the Doherty Valley specific plan. So it would basically provide permanent open space to tie into the Doherty Valley open space in the Hidden Valley at the upper portion and give a greater sense of protection to the Tassajara Ridge Trail. So we'd have open space on basically throughout the Tassajara Valley adjacent to the city of San Ramon.
So it would protect open space for us.
Yes, adjacent, not within our jurisdiction, but adjacent to our jurisdiction.
How many acres is that? Is that
South side was
607.
7. Thank you, Mayor.
Seeing no other questions, I have a couple. On your second to last slide, Debbie, no reason to show it again. You made the statement that because the fire district owns the property on the south side of Tassajara, and there is park space on the north side of Tassajara, that precludes any more development going east off of Tassajara. You made a comment. Did I hear what you say as being accurate?
So there's the green buffer, which is on the kind of more the northern portion of it.
Right.
And so that green buffer, since it's publicly owned or controlled lands, which I believe is the park district, and I can't remember the other entity at this time, that area, since it's publicly controlled and the property line is not coterminous with the urban limit line, that creates that green buffer.
So is the fire district, being publicly owned land, also a buffer?
No, they're in the southern portion. The 7 acres is in the southern portion of the boundary area.
Okay, thank you. Answer my question.
Excuse
Any
me,
other
Mr. Mayor.
questions? Please, Joe.
Our deputy city manager does have some maps that we can provide that will give a little more clarity.
Oh, cool.
Sure.
Steve, I think that cues you up.
Yes, and I'll share my screen with this, but also thank you to Councilmember Alone for suggesting these maps probably about a year ago, and our GIS team recently have updated both maps. So if you go to sanramon.ca.gov/open space, it will take you to this map that we have of the open space in San Ramon. And actually, if you zoom out, you can see a lot of the open space in the East Bay. So going through the map really quick, we have, here's the city of San Ramon limits. I'll zoom about to that extent. The darker blue is Save Mount Diablo data. So it's data that we receive from Save Mount Diablo about preserved land and permanently preserved open space. And then we have the GAD open space is in this lighter green. And then the lightest green is, if you click on any of them, it'll tell you this is what we labeled as unprotected land. So, and also the orange is all of the trails in the area. So it's an interactive map. You can play around with it.
Good map.
If you zoom into the areas that we're speaking about, here is a rough outline of the Tassajara Parks planned development area on the parcel that Debbie showed you. And then these 3 green parcels are the proposed preserved parcels. Now, if you zoom out, you can actually start to see, what's developing here. We have Mount Diablo up to the north, and then Dueling Canyon down here to the south. And there's this corridor that's forming of open space in that area. So it's a good tool to just kind of click around and give you a sense of, where these open space parcels are. Again, if you click on any one of them, it'll tell you, if it's in the GAD or what the parcels are. And then a second map that we've been working on, and I'll have a link to that shortly. Did the screen change?
Yep.
Is a timeline map. So it starts in 1952 with all of the protected land in the area. And if you hit play, it'll start populating all of the parcels as they were preserved. Right now, we just have East Bay Parks. So you see the East Bay Parks District popping up. And then you will see the Santa, there's Bishop Ranch open space just popped up. And then eventually you'll start to see, as we get into the 2000s, you'll see the GAD spaces start to populate on this map as well, with all of the dedications. The one data set that we are still working on is the data set from Save Mount Diablo. So at the end of the map, if you click that on, you could see all of the protected open space in that one map. And so there you have both open space maps.
Steve, I want to thank you for creating those maps, and Phil, your idea of doing that is really, I think, for the residents of San Ramon to see the progression of parks being built over time. And you might even add another couple of layers to that in terms of trails and other things, but that is the start of a really great interactive map, which, so thank you very much. Joe, appreciate you guys bringing that to us. That was very, very helpful. Before we go to public comment, any other clarifying questions from council? Seeing none, I'm going to go back to Christina. We have, I think, about 55 minutes left for discussion. We currently have at least 18 written comments, and there may be others who want to speak. We'll go with the public comments first, if that would be okay.
Okay. So for those in the audience that would like to speak, please use the raise your hand button at this time. We do have one person that's already raised their hand, Seth Adams.
Sorry, guys, I thought the meeting was at 6, so I came on in a hurry at 5:30, and that's why I wasn't sure what was going on. Could you tell me how much time we have for public comments?
3 minutes.
Okay, so as you guys well know, Save Mount Diablo has been a significant supporter of the conservation benefits of this proposal for quite some time, which is quite a switch from our opposition to development in the Tasahara Valley. Back when the TVPOA proposal was going on, we had a proposal for 6,000 units on about 5,000 acres, stretching from Alameda County all the way to Mount Diablo State Park. In 2013, David Bowlby came in and started facilitating the Tasahara Parks proposal, looking for a way to collaborate with environmental and community groups, and came forward with a proposal to adjust the urban limit line for 30 acres with a 94% open space ratio to that 30 acre, 94% of 776 acres would be protected, which was really tremendous. And this is a gorgeous piece of land. There's a piece of open space stretching around the 30 acres up next to Danville, but the 3 parcels next to San Ramon are just incredible. No development would be proposed there at all, adjacent to the Tasahara Ridge Trail and a Hidden Valley open space, and part of that corridor that Stephen was talking about. So Save Mount Diablo got on board, as did East Bay Regional Park District, that we were in favor of the conservation benefits of this project. It's actually a better deal even than the laborers camp, similar proposal that the city has taken up previously. And if you go up to the Tasahara Ridge Trail from Windermere, you know that the views are incredible. It's world-class spectacular. It will further expand San Ramon's bookends of East Bay Regional Park District open space to the east and the west. It's all important wildlife habitat. It buffers the trail. It extends down to Tasahara Creek, which is really significant. And it doesn't just affect the parcels that we're talking about. It gets San Ramon and the county on the same into agreement about the whole Tassajara region. It includes an enhancement fund of $4 million that the city would have a seat at the table in discussing how that money should be spent. We think it's an actually incredibly positive precedent for how to do small adjustments to the urban limit line with big sets of public benefits and big ratios of preservation to support them. So Save Mount Diablo supports the conservation trade-off and the MOU, and we appreciate your time. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. We've been involved in this from the very beginning.
Thank you very much, Seth.
Next comment is from Jim Blickenstaff.
Hello, Jim. You're on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Jim. Go ahead.
Rather than saying good evening, City Council, a common phrase is, can you hear me these days?
Yeah.
So with that, I would like to note that Seth Adams being the exception, there are a number of groups and environmental groups and other entities that are against this proposal. That includes East Bay Mud, Danville, Greenbelt Alliance, Tassajara Valley Preservation Association, the Sierra Club, a petition by locals of 4,700 signatures against the project as it's proposed. And at the last meeting at the county, which was canceled at the last minute, there were over 100 statements presented at that time, and all of them were opposed to this. So I want to take that point of view as part of a better understanding of what's at risk here. First of all, locally, what's at risk is depriving a stakeholder, Danville, from any participation in an agreement that affects them directly. So that alone is part of the aspects of the preservation agreement. One of the key aspects of it is to exclude Danville from this agreement. And why do they want to do that? Because Danville's against the proposal. So to promote this thing, which will end up being a sprawled development with some gratuities in terms of protecting space that's already protected, that's nice, but it will end up being a sprawled development near Danville, and they will have the impacts. And that's why they're not part of this agreement. That on its face makes this vulnerable to challenges. There's a risk of further development in Tassajara. If you look at a map, it doesn't exclude other pathways to development. And there are also development companies in Tassajara waiting to see what happens with this breach of the urban limit line. It will give the template for other opportunities for other developers, not just in Tassajara, but other areas proposing land already protected, places that are difficult to get water or ridges, whatever, hundreds of acres perhaps, so that they can go on the wrong side of the urban limit line. And there's a lot of down issues here that need to be looked at in the context of the overall picture for the betterment of the community. So I'd say in terms of city of San Ramon should not be authoritative city in this regard. Their access to this area is 5.1 miles of roadway to get to it. In Danville, it's 2.1. So the adjacency of the negative impacts of the development of this plan, which is a contingent part of the preservation agreement, the development plan is part of that. They go together. Well, the impacts of that will be felt by Danville. And it's almost like you're stabbing a sister city in the back to say, we don't care about the impacts on Danville. We're going to go ahead with something that gives us some East Bay parks east of the city. So I'd say there's a lot more to look at here before you even think about going to a conclusion, the least of that, which is it's been stalled at this county for a long time and it's still stalled. So
Jim, your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
We have a lot of other speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That appears to be the last hand raised. I do still have a written comment that I've received for this item.
Yes. We have 18 written comments, and let's see if we can get through those. We have plenty of time for discussion.
Okay. Let me just change my screen. So the first public comment is from Patrick Trown. I'm opposed to the development known as Tassajara Parks and to their agricultural preservation agreement APA that the developer is proposing to justify the housing development outside of the county's urban limit line. This agreement is simply a non-enforceable document designed to win the Tassajara Parks high-density housing project approval and facilitate a development into agricultural space. The ULL was approved by the county to protect the Tassajara Valley, a precious natural resource, from the development. Devices such as the APA are ways to get around this long-established limit and will provide no more protections to the Tassajara Valley than is already provided by the ULL. It is extremely premature for San Ramon to act on this matter until the county determines the fate of the final environmental report and before the new members of the city council have been sworn in. Why was this meeting called such short notice, and what is the rush? The next is from Ruby Kane. Apparently, or developers wouldn't be trying to change it. They're shopping this around cities, trying to get anybody to approve their greedy plan. Don't do this to your city, and don't do it to your neighboring cities either. Why is this even a thing? How do they have a whole development proposal that is completely disregards that they can't build it where they want to? I suggest you send them packing with some force. The next is from Shane and Deanne Garehi. I'm writing in opposition to the Tassajara Parks APA. I urge you to reject the staff report as flawed and incomplete. The county has yet to make a determination on the final environmental report. This valley is the last open agricultural space in the valley. The density sought by the developer undermines the urban limit line, destroys this area, and is not able to be supported by infrastructure. The next is from Tassajara Valley Preservation Association. The Tassajara Valley Preservation Association opposes the Agricultural Preserve Agreement, APA, that would facilitate approval of the Tassajara Parks 125 home development, which is in the unincorporated Tassajara Valley and outside the county's urban limit line, ULL. Council members should be aware of the following facts and therefore signal the county that the city of San Ramon rejects the Agricultural Preserve Agreement. Staff reports is incorrect when it states that the APA secures permanent open space in Tassajara Valley. Government entities cannot contract away their zoning privileges. The APA is not a permanent document and does not legally restrict San Ramon or the county from changing the zoning in Tassajara Valley at any time, even the day after adoption. There's no enforcement mechanism in the APA or penalties for withdrawing from the agreement. The only purpose of the APA is for Tassajara Parks to qualify for an exception to building outside the ULL. For further proof of this legal point and that the APA does not constitute a valid preservation agreement, refer to the attached opinion letter from the firm, M.R. Wolf. Number two, the staff report is incorrect in that it repeats the error in the final environmental report for Tassajara Parks. The development of Tassajara Parks is over 50 acres, not 30 acres, and therefore illegal. Developments outside the UL in excess of 30 acres require countywide voter approval. The developer excludes the 20 acres of non-urban infrastructure that includes a detention basin, a pumping station, and landscaping that is integral to the project. Danville's response to various drafts of the EIR identified this error. An analogy map may help. If a street in San Ramon has 7-ton load limit and a 7-ton truck is carrying a load of 5 tons on the street, the truck cannot plead that only the weight of the truck alone should be considered. The truck is in violation of San Ramon's road weight limit. Staff report is incomplete since it omits the result of the mandatory county study conducted at the end of 2016. The study concluded that sufficient capacity exists countywide inside the ULL to accommodate housing and the job growth through 2036. Thus, given our county's capacity, there is no need to approve a development outside the ULL. Don't have the second letter back to that. I have to come back to that, the second letter for that. I don't have the back side of it. Let me see. I apologize. I'll get that printed. The next one is from Kelly Stephanos. With regard to the agenda item, Tassajara Parks Agriculture Preserve Agreement at the San Ramon City Council special meeting on November 10th, 2020, I wish to urge the City Council to reject the developer's ploy to put forth and justify the housing development outside of the county's urban limit line. Furthermore, the Tassajara Parks Agricultural Preserve Agreement is both flawed and incomplete. The APA is simply a non-enforceable feel-good environment document designed to win the Tassajara Parks high-density housing project approval and facilitate a development into agricultural open space. The APA will provide no more protections to the Tassajara Valley than is already provided by the urban limit line. The voters have repeatedly and succinctly expressed or desire to maintain and preserve a pristine Tassajara Valley, and to entertain the proposed Tassajara Parks development is to willfully disregard your citizens. Also, it is premature for San Ramon to act on this matter until the county determines the fate of the final environmental report. Perhaps more troubling and decidedly unethical is that this proposal is being put forth before the new members of the City Council have been sworn in. I urge you to remember that you are to be representatives of your citizens and not a greedy developer. The next is Dana Hayter, and I'm writing regarding this item to be heard at the San Ramon City Council. I'm writing to oppose the Tassajara Parks development in the related misleading name Tassajara Parks Agricultural Preserve Agreement. Please do not support Tassajara Parks and any other development into agricultural open space. Please reject the APA. The APA will provide no more protections to the Tassajara Valley than it is already provided by the urban limit line, which should be respected, not tossed aside. Additionally, it is premature at best for San Ramon to act on this matter on short notice before Contra Costa County has finalized its assessment of the final environmental report and before the new members of the City Council have been sworn in. I'd like to go back to the Tassajara Valley Preservation Association. I have the second page to their letter. Staff report ignored over 820 pages in the EIR of community responses opposing Tassajara Parks. This is in addition to the over 4,700 residents of the unincorporated Tassajara Valley, Danville, and San Ramon signing a petition opposing the development. Staff also ignored the negative responses to the EIR from the Greenbelt Alliance, Sierra Club, and most importantly from the East Bay Municipal Utility District that stated that they will not provide water to this project that is outside their ultimate service boundary. The staff report fails to identify that traffic proceeding north onto Camino Tassajara must pass through Danville before it passes through any other municipality. Danville would bear the brunt of traffic and other services that will be generated by Tassajara Parks. Staff does not point out that the proposed development site is within Danville's area of interest, since Danville is on record as opposing this development and is nexus to it. San Ramon should defer to Danville's objections. We trust that council members will see through the sham of the APA, simply a non-enforceable feel-good document designed to win project approval and facilitate a development into agricultural open space. The APA will provide no more protections to the Tassajara Valley than is already provided by the urban limit line. We urge you to reject this staff report as flawed and incomplete and to oppose the APA. Finally, it's premature for San Ramon to act on this matter until the county determines the fate of the final EIR and before the new members of the council have been sworn in. The next is from Sue Howell. I am opposed to any development outside the urban limit line and urge you to oppose the Tassajara Parks Agriculture Preserve Agreement. Justification can be found in the report below, and she references the letter that was just read by the Tassajara Valley Protection Association or Preservation Association. The next public comment is from Sandy Wiedemann. You have my respect and appreciation for the amount of work involved in digging into issues that come before you. To date, I have supported every effort to build houses on the proposed Tassajara Parks land, primarily because of the landowner's property rights. I also believe in what my family has for generations. In effect, we get to live here. Why shouldn't they? I'm not aware that ever before have the rights of farmers, ranchers, and homeowners on neighboring lands been so violated, at least in this area. As I understand it, 17,000 acres of land will have a nebulous government blanket laid over us in exchange for moving the publicly determined ULL. If there is nothing to the agreement, why is it being presented as such a great thing? I'm concerned that the blanket will be subject to future interpretation, even if proclaimed harmless. there will impose another layer of government on an already regulated agriculture, which the title agricultural preserve change from ag enhancement, also ridiculous, incorrectly proclaims. This is in no way a solution for preserving agriculture. It provides no help for agriculture. People began moving here when San Ramon's population was about 100 and I was 20 years old. I and our family welcome them, and we still do. They love looking at our ranch land, and I understand that. So far, however, government regulations are tight. Not one has been beneficial in helping the agriculture business for our family. In fact, our rights to do just about anything to keep our ranch going have been trod on. Hopefully you understand that the move of this developer to use this sly trick of gouging neighbors who work hard to hang on to their property will be freely used to move ULL once you open the floodgates. Please vote no on the agreement that comes before you in the form of the Tassajara Parks Agricultural Agreement. Therefore, also voting no on moving the ULL. Encourage developers to build houses if that's what you want, but without screwing, the rest of us. I sure hope it's not true that the only reason Save Mountain Diablo, the only environmentalist group not opposed, is in favor of this agreement, is that they will receive a large sum of money that the developer put in the pot. Please define Tuesday's meeting who will receive the money. I also hope you agree that it is outrageous that Danville has been removed from this process, apparently because they were vocal in their opposition. The next is from Kevin Liu. I wrote letters to the majority of the San Ramon City Council members back in 2017 about this proposed project, with all the letters went unanswered. So I'm hoping that my voice and opinion be heard by all council members through this public comment period for this hastily scheduled new agenda item. By taking the time to write, I'm expecting that this comment will help inform your decision to take further action by rejecting this project. I'm vehemently opposed to the thought and consideration that the county would consider moving the urban limit line to allow development of a 30-acre site when development could occur without moving the ULL and without using loopholes such as the 30-acre consideration, which Tassajara Valley Preservation Association notes development is greater than 30 acres. Furthermore, my house directly borders the proposed development, so this letter should be given special attention because the EIR hardly gives consideration to properties that are immediately adjacent to the proposed development, which is already evidenced by proposing to develop against our backyard as opposed to developing further away towards Finley Road, but within the parcel. But I'm not sure the developer does not want to propose pushing the UL even further. The entire proposed plan has fingerprints of poor urban planning, developmental greed, and an attempt to exploit loopholes in planning law and voter approved requirements such as Measure L. As a Contra Costa taxpaying citizen, I expect public officials to uphold planning law, not let developers cherry pick and choose elements / create planning deals to get their projects approved. I also would have expected the San Ramon Council to have already rejected the draft EIR and to take an opposition position like the city of Danville has done based on flawed components that the Tassajara Valley Preservation Association has been citing since the beginning of the developer's submission. Nonetheless, here's how the proposed development directly affects my family. Number one, significant effects on my children who have severe life-threatening asthma and irritant skin allergies that will flare during constructive activities. My children have severe asthma requiring trips to the ER due to difficulty in breathing when an episode occurs. Our house borders the proposed construction and invariably construction dust, regardless of dust control mitigation measures. I'm a builder myself. Will flare my children's asthma, which will immediately put them in danger. We purchased our house relying on a firm fixed urban limit line, providing a safe haven against our children's asthma, and now the county's consideration moving the UL via a loophole / planning deals is simply a complete disrespect to our family and our children's health. Significant noise during construction and post-construction that will make sleeping, rest, and respite difficult in my own home, regardless of the noise studies in the EIR. He makes about 3 other points. There's about 4 more paragraphs if you would like me to continue or stop at the 3 minutes.
Let's stop at 3 minutes. We're fair to all parties.
Okay, thank you. The next is from Steve Archer. This project is outside the urban limit growth line, and infill projects should be done first versus urban sprawl. We need to keep the agricultural open space since there is not going to be any more land added in the future. This project needs to be fully reviewed for the EIR. People need to live closer to the jobs to help lower climate change due to greenhouse gas from auto traffic. The next comment is from Jim and Kathy Soleil. We are writing to voice our concern about the proposed Tassajara Parks project. We are homeowners in the Tassajara Valley and have resided here for the last 36 years. We moved to the Tassajara Valley because of the quiet beauty that the valley offers. Over the last 36 years, there have been considerable development along with its strain on the infrastructure that is needed to support it. We have watched the encroaching developments move closer and closer to us from both the north and south along Tassajara Road. There are many reasons not to move forward with this project as presented. For us, one of the greatest concerns is the additional traffic that will be added to an already overtaxed Tassajara Road south of Finley Road to the Contra Costa County line to the south and along Highland Road. We have read the EIR report, which minimizes the impact, but it's not accurate. The vehicle and bicycle traffic has gotten out of control, even with the added bike lanes. Any added traffic due to this development just makes this traffic situation worse and more dangerous. This is a fact from those that live it on a daily basis. Please do not agree to sign on to this project. The next comment is from Christian Wiedemann. I'm writing on behalf of the Tassajara Valley Property Owners Association, TVPOA, regarding the Tassajara Parks Agreement on tonight's agenda. The TVPOA is an association of property owners and residents of the Tassajara Valley, the area that is impacted by the agreement you are discussing tonight. Simply stated, this agreement is fraudulent and dishonest. It was written by the Tassajara Parks developer as a means to move the urban limit line without a public vote. Multiple legal opinions have shown the agreement does not meet the county's legal requirements for a preservation agreement. In fact, it creates a path for more high-density development in Tassajara in the future, despite claims to the contrary. To vote in favor of this agreement is to be complicit in this fraud. The TVPOA strongly opposes any action by the City Council on the proposed agreement for the following reasons. 1, this agreement is part of the Tassajara Parks project, which has not yet been approved by the county or even had a public hearing for approval. It is premature and inappropriate for the San Ramon City Council to act on this issue unless and until the Tassajara Parks project is approved by the county. It is also premature for the council to act on this issue until the recent City Council election results have been finalized and the new City Council members have been sworn in. 3, as mentioned previously, the agreement is fundamentally fraudulent and dishonest. 4, according to the county's most recent study of local housing inventory and the urban limit line, the Tassajara Parks project is unnecessary since there is room inside the urban limit line to meet local housing demand for decades to come. 5, approving this agreement will break the urban limit line. San Ramon voters overwhelmingly support the urban limit line. Therefore, voting in favor of this agreement goes against the will of San Ramon's voters. 6, the agreement creates murky land use restrictions and unclear legal consequences for every resident of Tassajara. No one asked for this agreement and no one wants it. 7, this agreement dishonestly bills itself as a preservation agreement, but does not actually preserve anything, since Tassajara is already legally preserved by the urban limit line. In addition to our group, the agreement is vocally opposed by the town of Danville, the Greenbelt Alliance, the Sierra Club, the Tassajara Valley Preservation Association, and East Bay Mud. On behalf of the residents of Tassajara, I respectfully request that you vote no on the Tassajara Parks Agreement. Thank you for your consideration on this important issue. The next comment is from Bill and Holly Newman. The urban limit line was adopted in order to enable smart growth in Contra Costa County. In 2016, this ULL was reviewed and not changed because of the conclusion in the CC Board of Supervisors staff report, December 20, 2016, that states, staff believes the analysis described above demonstrates that sufficient capacity exists countywide inside the ULL to accommodate housing and job growth through 2036. The APA being considered does not change the protections for land outside of the ULL. which are already protected. The APA being considered does allow a 50-acre, 30 acres of urban density residences and 20 acres of support infrastructure development enveloped outside of the ULL in exchange for land and money. It further encourages a 7-acre unconstrained development, which we understand to be used by the San Ramon FPD to train fighting urban fires. That's a 57-acre violation of the ULL with one agreement. All this APA does is to allow development of specific project, Tassajara Parks, outside of the ULL, which its EIR has found to be contrary to the GHG emission goals of the county. An unwanted burden on existing infrastructure for water and traffic in the project area and unnecessary in this location according to the ULL review of 2016. For these reasons, we strongly recommend that the San Ramon City Council not support this APA or the Tassajara Parks development. The next is from James Taylor. I strongly oppose to the Tassajara Parks development. I refuse to use the words agricultural preserve agreement simply because it's false and misleading. This is simply a method to allow developers into our area. Building 125 homes in this area is not preserving the area. Traffic and population density will greatly impact the life of current residents. A big issue in our area, the proposed location for the development will interfere with natural flow of watershed into the Tassajara Creek. This feeds aquifers and underground water to many of the residents here. The development will simply form a catch basin and funnel off water that naturally flows into a culvert and dump the water into a drop drain away from the area. This is unacceptable. I read the EIR and it was grossly misleading and inaccurate. Furthermore, the ULL was put into place to preserve the area from the potential development. You are forcing the removal of this ULL to force development into the area. They are using preserve agreement as a way to convince people that this will save Tassajara area. Let me remind you that the ULL was put into place to do just that. Why should we remove it? It is inappropriate for the San Ramon City Council to act on this issue until recently elected council members have been sworn in and until Contra Costa County has decided to move forward with the Tassajara Parks project. So this hearing is poorly timed and premature. The agreement is fraud and was invented by the Tassajara Parks developer to try to skip the required public vote to move the ULL for the project. If San Ramon moves forward with the agreement, they are complicit in this fraudulent strategy. The agreement dishonestly bills itself as a preservation agreement, but does not actually preserve anything, since Tassajara is already legally protected by the urban limit line. The agreement creates murky land use restrictions and unclear legal consequences for every landowner in Tassajara, which no one asked for. Multiple legal opinions, including one paid for by our group, have concluded that the agreement is not valid or enforceable as a legal criteria to allow the urban limit line to be modified without a public vote. In addition to our group, the agreement is vocally opposed by the Town of Danville, Greenbelt Alliance, Sierra Club, and East Bay Mud. Please do not allow this meeting and false proposal to move forward. The next is from Albrecht Kohler. Speaking for a family that has been living in the Tassajara Valley for over 100 years, I would like to voice my concerns for the ongoing developments regarding this matter. It is my understanding that there are currently no city council members who have a legal basis for moving forward this agreement. Furthermore, trying to adjust the ULL without informing landowners affected by this agenda with the preservation agreement is dishonest and seems like a fraudulent strategy. No such agenda has been requested by any landowners in Tassajara Valley. So far, the exclusive beneficiary of the proposed project is the Tassajara Parks developer, who therefore tries to circumvent a public vote on the matter. We strongly oppose the introduction of any land use restrictions, which we see as legal consequences of such an agreement. Tassajara Valley is already legally protected. We would like to point out that moving the ULL under proposed agreement legally requires a public vote. Any deviating path is both not enforceable and will be considered a legal action. The next is from Susan Vance. Council members, I understand that you're reviewing the APA submitted by the developer for the Tassajara Parks High Density Housing Project. I urge you to reject this staff report as flawed and incomplete and to oppose the Tassajara Parks APA. The APA is simply a non-enforceable feel-good document designed to win the local government approval and facilitate a development into agricultural open space. The APA will provide no more protections to the Tassajara Valley than is already provided by the ULL. Any decision made tonight on the basis that the APA is premature and as the county has not yet ruled on the fate of the final EIR and the council has not yet seated its new members. The housing project violates the ULL approved by a majority of county residents. Why is even being considered? Its development will not ease housing demand significantly, but will degrade the area with sprawl. More importantly, it will disrupt/destroy water supplies to the many thousands of nearby residents depending on well water. Will the county pay the millions required to bring us city water when our wells fail, as many did in the last drought? Add to the added traffic, strain on our already crowded schools, and the negatives of the development far outweigh the positives. The next is from Zoe Siegel, and she's the Director of Climate Resilience at Greenbelt Alliance. Greenbelt Alliance is an environmental nonprofit that encourages both the protection of open space as well as directing development and growth into our existing communities. We have been working for over 30 years to fight sprawl development in the Tassajara Valley. We have major concerns about this project and the Agricultural Preserve Agreement specifically. Greenbelt Alliance supports the intention to expand the ULL, but we are opposed to the APA that would facilitate approval of the Tassajara Parks 125 home development, which is in unincorporated Tassajara Valley and outside the county's urban limit line. The APA is a non-enforceable document designed to win project approval and facilitate a development into agricultural open space. City boundaries were created for a reason. We need to protect our open spaces and focus growth inside the city limits. A 2016 study by the county that was conveniently omitted from the staff report states that sufficient capacity exists countywide inside the ULL to accommodate housing and growth through 2036. Therefore, there is no need to expand the urban limit line. The cities of Danville, San Ramon, and Contra Costa County need to work together on this issue. It is premature for San Ramon to act on this matter until the county determines the fate of the final EIR and before the new members of the council have been sworn in. This issue needs to be dealt with in tandem with the county, who has delayed the final EIR. We would like to urge you not to approve this APA and work with the county on the appropriate next steps for the project. We need to build communities that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, protect our open spaces, and save our wildlife. Greenbelt Alliance looks forward to helping the city of San Ramon achieve regional climate goals through increasing housing in existing communities and building infill housing within the ULL. The next, I received 2 public comments from Carrie Rasmussen Wheeler and Christiana Kohler. They're identical, so I will read just one. It is inappropriate for the San Ramon City Council to act on this issue until the recently elected council have been sworn in, and until the county has decided to move forward with the project, so the hearing is poorly timed and premature. This agreement is fraud and was invented by the Tassajara Parks developer to try to skip the required public vote to move the ULL for the Tassajara Parks project. If San Ramon moves forward with this agreement, they are complicit in this fraudulent strategy. The agreement dishonestly bills itself as a preservation agreement, but does not actually preserve anything, since Tassajara is already legally protected by the ULL. The agreement creates murky land use restrictions and unclear legal consequences for every landowner in Tassajara, which no one asked for. Multiple legal opinions, including one paid for by our group, have concluded the agreement is not valid or enforceable as a legal criteria to allow for the ULL to be modified without a public vote. In addition to our group, the agreement is vocally opposed by the town of Danville, Greenbelt Alliance, Sierra Club, Tassajara Valley Preservation Association, East Bay Mud, and many others. And that was the last written public comment.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, open it up for questions or comments. And Phil, you've got your hand up first, so go right ahead. Scott, you are on mute.
Thanks, Bill. First of all, I just I appreciate people's concerns, and I understand some of them. And I would just like to offer my opinions about this at this point. What I view this as is fundamentally, this is an opportunity from my perspective to permanently preserve land that's publicly accessible land that's directly next to our Hidden Valley open space. It directly connects it. It's at the top of the hill, and it's the vast majority of what, in fact, comes out of this as far as a benefit to the community. That there's roughly 1 square mile of land that is in San Ramon's best interest to see preserved permanently and made publicly accessible. I think the public accessibility is a big deal. It's also, the party to the agreement is East Bay Parks. It's not a developer, it's East Bay Parks, who also would be the party that would own the collar around the 127 acres. So East Bay Parks is stronger than the urban limit line, significantly stronger, because you can't vote East Bay Parks away. They stay there. Even if in 30 years folks wanted to move the urban limit line, East Bay Parks would be there. So it can't get moved south. They don't even let somebody put a 10-foot piece of water pipe across a property of theirs. They don't let people touch it. I think that's a significant element of this. This is not next to Danville. It's next to San Ramon. Danville's a mile north from the bottom of Blackhawk, at least. It's not in Danville. This property is next to us. It's in San Ramon's interest to do a number of these things. As Seth Adams said, it's a better deal than the laborers' camp. It's 95% of the property will be preserved permanently as open space. There's a $4 million enhancement fund. That's a significant amount of money to do things such help agriculture as it relates to water. It also gives us the potential, the real potential, which has been an interest of mine and this council, I believe, to ultimately make it possible to walk on publicly accessible open space from San Ramon all the way to Mount Diablo State Park. And this gets us very close. I fundamentally believe that this puts a green cork at the top of Tassajara Valley. It's got East Bay Parks on both sides of it. It's also, I think it's a situation where that the conservation aspects of this far outweigh what are legitimate concerns, but I think the conservation aspects of this and having East Bay Parks as a partner in this is really important. My understanding of the money as far as who has control of it, it's the parties that are party to the agreement, which only makes sense. You can't say I oppose the agreement and then want to be a party to the agreement as far as how money's spent. That just doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure what Danville's motivations were. It doesn't really matter. I'm judging this differently myself. And then, the organization from my perspective that has done the most in terms of preserving land and fighting these fights for decades around here has been Save Mount Diablo. And they've come forward and said they support the very same conservation aspects that I view as being really important. So, I think we should proceed with supporting this, and I think we should I'm going to make a motion, likely at the end of this, that we move forward with the agricultural preservation agreement. And I would just like to say that it's this is just another step in permanently preserving the Tassajara Valley and doing the very things that this council had as one of its 6 major goals. And finally, in my view, what I have hoped we could do, and we've done over the course of my time on the council, is get a good neighbor. And the best neighbor that we can have on either side of town, as far as I'm concerned, is East Bay Parks. They make a great neighbor, and this furthers that goal. So that's my view of it at this point.
Thank you, Phil. Next up, anybody raising a hand here? Scott.
Yes, I too will be supporting this. People said we should wait till the new council is sworn in. Well, business doesn't stop for a month or two until everybody's back in some seats. So we continue to move forward with our business of the city. And so you may not like the people that are on the council now, but you had a chance a week ago to do something about it. I also believe that East Bay Parks makes a wonderful neighbor, but more than that, as Phil said, once they own the land, it's not going to get developed. There is no mechanism whereby the citizens can force East Bay Mud or East Bay Parks to build residences on their land. They preserve it and they'll keep it preserved. And by having land on both sides of Camino Tassajara, it effectively puts a cork in the bottle. So there will be no further urban or suburban type development moving forward. Danville chose to not support this. They felt that I heard that they felt that the traffic for 125 homes was going to be too much. Having gone through, I've lived here 40 years and I saw, the whole Dougherty Valley developed with 11,000 homes, and somehow we've managed that project, and it's not made San Ramon horrible. Yeah, there are times of the day when there's some congestion, but 125 homes is not going to make Danville unlivable. I'm sorry that they chose not to participate, but that's on them. The $4 million fund, I look forward to working with the Tassajara Valley Owners Association and others. I see water as probably the biggest issue here. And if that $4 million can help drill some very deep wells that those landowners can use when the time comes that their wells are going dry, but this well is deep enough that it will conserve them under those circumstances, I hope that would be one of the possible uses, because I know water is always a critical issue. They all live on well water out there, and there are times when they have to truck in water that they can't, that their wells have gone dry. Well, I'm sure that this development will also use the water, or they're going to have to find a way to make sure that the water that falls on their land actually gets into the groundwater and doesn't just pour down the gutters and run away. So I'm really pleased that this is a 95% preservation. That's a fabulous ratio, and every time you can get 95% preserved and 5% developed, you should jump at the chance. It's those kinds of opportunities don't come along very often. Thank you.
Sabina.
So I had a quick question about the EIR, the county EIR, and what is the expectation there? And do we have to wait for that before we take a vote tonight?
No, there is a provision in the APA that it's the county's sole discretion to certify the EIR, and the EIR is not certified, the MOU or the APA will not move forward. So there is a backstop in place.
Okay.
Dave. You're on mute, Dave. Just.
I
You're on
want to
mute,
stay
Dave.
on mute. No. You know, I wanted to almost correct a few things while I was listening to the letter. First of all, I think I don't need to repeat the stuff that Phil said. I will take exception to what Seth said. It's a personal opinion. I'm sorry, this is not better than Big Canyon, and I'll never accept that we didn't get a good city in San Ramon. But that's a personal opinion, Seth, and I'm not going to debate it. I understand where you're coming from. I know that the $4 million, I'd forgotten all about it, was a point of contention. But there are a lot of things that have changed that people need to understand. First of all, this is not sprawl. This is contiguous growth. There's growth on Finley. There's growth right next to where we're building this. And the big issue as far as the houses, or one of the issues, it shouldn't be. 125 homes. Danville's finding out now that they probably wish they did have this, because I don't know where they're going to find 2,000 homes. And that's probably where their arena number is going to pop in. Well, county's going to be in the same spot. So they're not going to be turning down a lot of little houses here, little housing there. And this isn't high density. That I don't know where I heard that one. The other thing, it'd probably be interesting to see where the Danville does end up after the next couple months with this project. I know they're going to want to negotiate with the $4 million and what happens. The urban limit line that a lot of people are talking about that they thought was permanent expires December 31st, 2026, as far as your half-cent sales tax is concerned. And this is what really has me concerned. Are we really fighting over this? But I'm looking at it as what is San Ramon's part in this? And I think I just go back and ditto, Phil, what you were saying for the projects. My real concern, it's why I asked the question, is the other 26 square miles in this agricultural preserve. And I heard that it was into perpetuity, and then, well, it's not a permanent document. I mean, I wish there was some way to add into it little things like, there are people that like small ranchettes and stuff like that, but it's the counties. And I'm back to the same thing. We had an opportunity way back at the beginning to join with the 30-acre county urban limit line. And we chose, because of a vote of the people back in 2002, to do a municipal one. So it's harder to build in San Ramon and anywhere else. And as Phil pointed out, there's a lot of open space that's going to come with us. I don't like the APA. I don't like it without a date on it. I mean, Williamson Act had 10 years. That bothers me more than anything that's out there. But in all honesty, this is going to be the county's issue, and Danville's going to be putting up the biggest fight. And I'd really hate to take a position and say Danville's right and find out, whoops, we got to come up with 2,000 homes, and they've changed their mind tomorrow. So, I'm not wild about the project. I just as soon get rid of this headache that has been Tassajara forever if this does it. I mean, some of us who will be swearing in next month, 3 of us, have been around for a long time. I was there during the TVPOA, and at 46, 4,300, this, that. I mean, there were plans. But if the state's going to keep doing these arena numbers, we're going to be coming back to these people begging them to build. So, I've just talked for 4 or 5 minutes. I'm doing the Amy Worth Be Brief, and I wish that the APA were different. I'm really undecided. That APA bothers me. 26 miles, but I personally think that 10, 20 years from now, people are going to look at it different, and it's still in the county. So I can't think of anything bad about this to get rid of this project. Is what I'm telling you, folks, other than this APA putting a blanket over a lot of people. But if that county person you were talking about were here, Debbie, says, no, this doesn't preclude them from doing ag in a smaller parcels, then it would make a difference. But it isn't going to make a difference really what we do, tell you the truth. This is the county and Danville that are going to be fighting it out.
Thank you, Dave. I see this really as two different aspects. One is the process of developing the project, on the 30 acres, and the other is the preserve project where they want to preserve the agricultural space. And I think, Debbie, you mentioned the county person is actually on the line. Is that true?
Yes, John Kopchak is the Director of Conservation Development, and he appears to be on still.
Good, because I have a question for John. As I listen carefully to the comments of a lot of the ranchers out there, and one family that's been a historical family here in San Ramon, the Wiedemans, own property out there, listening carefully to both their letters they write, which are very thoughtful, and conversations with them, they have a lot of concerns about how the county makes it difficult to do agriculture out there. And so my question for John, for the county, is what are they prepared to do to have the county become agricultural friendly for our, and I consider everybody out in that area our residents. That's San Ramon's planning area, going out towards Highland Road. I want to be very respectful and to make sure we do thoughtful things to take care of our residents out there. What is the county going to do and not do to make sure that they allow the residents out there to enjoy agriculture? It's a tough business to begin with. They have fought the county in a variety of stuff. Life becomes very difficult for them. What are they prepared to do to help those agricultural properties remain in business and continue?
Thank you, Mayor Clarkson, members of the council. Can you hear me okay? How's my audio?
We can, John. We can see you and hear you well.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much for inviting me to join your conversation. And to answer your question about what the county's prepared to do in terms of making agriculture, supporting it. It's a long-term effort of former Supervisor Pifo and then taken over by Supervisor Burgess, was to direct the county to pursue refinement of our agricultural policies. And we convened a task force that met over about an 18-month period of agriculturalists, staff, and other interested parties. And the board approved the recommendations of that body earlier this year. I can't remember if it was January or February, but it included a number of changes proposed to our agricultural policies, including policies to allow more agritourism, policies to try and promote the agriculture on that base, and trying to, find ways that when new development comes in, that it's not a bad neighbor to agriculture. So there are about 15 new policies in that. So that's one of the things the board approved that recommendation and asked staff to work on those. We're also in the middle of our first comprehensive general plan review in the last 30 years. It's called Envision Contra Costa 2040. And one of our key tasks in that is to try and make our agricultural policies kind of springboarding on this task force process, as to make sure that there aren't unintended consequences, that we allow ag to thrive and not set barriers that make ag less competitive.
Is there any mechanism to create, if not a formal, at least an advisory committee for this preserve area made up by property owners who live there?
There's no prohibition on doing that. The parties to the agreement could talk and discuss doing that.
Okay, that would be something to be, okay. I know that they're very frustrated at times by some of the restrictions the county puts on them. Some of them, most of the land out there is zoned, I believe, A80, which means minimum 80 acres. And when some of them want to take their 500 or 600 acres and divide it into smaller parcels, it's extremely difficult. And it's one of the things I want to share with you, that that is one of the ways that allows them sometimes to sell either to family members or to be able to have sell off pieces of it so they can maintain what they currently have. And so what I'm sharing with you is that I think it's incumbent upon the county, if we're going to create a preserve out there, let's do it with the absolute intent of allowing the residents to live out there to preserve agriculture and to make it as friendly for agriculture as we can. We can't solve the outside world problems, but we can try to take as many problems off the table from your table there at the county. So that's my comments about that. And I'm very appreciative, John, that you'd be here to listen to those comments and that you would listen carefully to the concerns of the residents in the valley.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. One of the things that Dave clarified, and I appreciate that, Dave, the urban limit line expires in 2026. And we talk about, and we've got to always be mindful, not of what we think people's intentions are, but what the capacity is. And the capacity is that after 2026, the voters can change their mind. The county can change their mind about their vision of the county. And I would hate to come back here in 10 years or 20 years, God willing, if I can last that long, and come back and find that because we did not take the opportunity to preserve our property, that we'll go out there and we'll see 4,000, we'll see 5,000 homes that are built in Taos Sahara because the Bay Area leadership will put pressure on the county to develop housing out there because there's this beautiful valley, the Taos Sahara Valley. It is a spectacular place. In fact, for those folks who haven't driven out there, drive on that road, it's a beautiful place. And they're going to ask, why are we allowing all that land to sit unused when there's horrible pressures on housing here in the Bay Area? And the capacity is that someday they may choose after 2026 to develop that property, and it may be irresistible and unable for our leadership to stop that from happening. So I want to do a shout out to Phil Alone in particular, because Phil, you've always had the vision way back, Measure W and before, about why we want to preserve Taos Sahara Valley. And I think most of the residents, I hear the residents of Taos Sahara saying they want to preserve the agricultural way of life. That's what I hear. And if we trade off, if we get a proposal that comes in that trades off 94% of it for open space that's permanent for a small development, I wish we had stuck those deals many, many years before in the other parts of San Ramon. What a great place this would be if we'd even put 50-50 in many of the projects we have built here in San Ramon over the years. And the ability for us and the legacy that this council can have of creating bookends of green open space on both sides is something that you can proudly go into later on in life and you look back upon what our council did. So I'm very much in support of this, but my support is really contingent upon the county being user-friendly to our property owners out there in that 17,000 acres and to make life as easy as they can in a tough business. And that if we can trade off a small section of land, 6% for open space, that's permanent, I think it's something that I would absolutely consider. And I do it very mindful of the concerns expressed by the residents, both in public and written comments tonight. I think their concerns around the development I disagree with, but their concerns around what happens with agriculture and their ability to conduct their life, I am very sympathetic to, and I would hope that the following council will continue to put pressure on the county that the property owners out there can continue to do their business without unnecessary oversight by the county. So Dave, you have your hand up. I don't want to ignore that.
Yeah, I want to point something out, and I hope I made it clear. Residents said this is not, or this should go to a vote. No, from day one in Measure L, you've had this 30-acre exception. This is not something that's out of the norm. The other thing that Phil brought up, it's going to sound like opposing, not even with Measure W. If San Ramon was planning this, we still would have had the 90-95% open space. I just don't think we could have done it as well as this project is, not because it's next to Danville, but because it is contiguous to what's out there. The school is there, and it's between there and Finley Road. We couldn't have done anything like this down in the southern part that Phil had mentioned is contiguous to trails and stuff that we have out there. We wouldn't have. And people would have been concerned, as they were during the vote of Measure W, that we were going to do more than 125. But the reality here is we have an opportunity now to end something that has just been going on forever and ever. And I don't think you're going to do it any better than this, other than make the whole thing ag or preserve. And you're not going to do that. And I see where the pressure is coming from. And I think you see Phil nodding his head. You bet these RHNA numbers are going up. They're not going down. And the pressure is going to be on the county too. So Yeah, I don't like it, but it's one of these things that I can see where it could get worse. And this is what we're up against right now.
Thank you, Dave. Given the time,
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor, if I might.
well, Sabina raised her hand. so I'm gonna-
Sorry, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I wanted to just listen to all of you because you've been doing this much longer. I've also been hearing about this at least for the last 3 to 4 years. Pretty much talked to everybody, pretty much heard from everybody on the pros and the cons. And one of the things I see here is there was a reason that there was a provision of those 30 acres. So it is all within the bounds of what is already allowable. And then if the developer has waited for 23 years, the developer can wait another 6 years. And when we again, reset the urban limit line, if that comes back to the voters, who knows what gets changed. So this is proactively making sure that we preserve that open land next to San Ramon. For me, it is important for us to have a seat at that table to decide what are we going to do with the $4 million. It is important for me to, as San Ramon, to have a seat at the table to be part of the decision that may get made. Again, some of the things I agree with what Mayor Clarkson said. Something that we should certainly look at people who've been there for years and that do want to do something with agriculture. We should fully support that. I appreciate really Councilmember Alone for protecting our open spaces. You have been the person and you've been known throughout your years here to be preserving our open space, and I really respect your opinion on your advice on what you tell us about open spaces and how we're protecting it. So with that, I think those were kind of my comments. I wanted to make sure.
Phil, you have something to say? A motion.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to bring the Tassajara Parks Agricultural Preservation Agreement back to the council for approval at our next council meeting in November.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Alone, seconded by Perkins. Any other follow-up comments? Not seen any. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Hudson,
Aye.
Councilmember Alone,
Aye.
Councilmember Perkins,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zafar,
Aye.
and Mayor Clarkson.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
I'd like to just make one other comment. I want to really thank Joe and Stephen for that. That map tells a great story, and older than that preservation started long before I was born around here, and I just think it's really neat to see that, and that those pictures tell wonderful stories, and there's a heck of a lot of work that goes into doing something like that technically. So thanks a lot, Stephen and Joe. Great work, and to that GIS team. Thank you.
Dave, you have a brief comment?
Yeah, I want to point out that Measure J actually, when we were putting it together, the last one in March, that we were going to take away that 30-acre vote, and it didn't get support. I don't understand that one at all, but this is one of the things about uncertainty. You grab it when you can.
Yep, exactly right. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 4, adjournment.
We will adjourn for at least 10 minutes to give people a
Thanks, Phil.
chance to do, and we'll see you
Sure,
in
do you
10.
have a second on that?
See you soon.
Those who are in favor signify by clicking off.